Now let's look at pwd, or print working directory. This will show us the direct path to where we are in the command line. This command is really useful because as we start to traverse through directories inside of our operating system, it's a little bit more difficult to tell where we are. If you ever want to see the direct access to the folder we're in, we can type pwd to see our current working directory. Here we can see I'm in users, instructor, projects. If I traverse back a directory and type pwd, now we can see that I'm in users, instructor. Now let's look at makedir, mkdir. This allows us to create a new directory. Since Terminal is so powerful, we have access to most of the commands that are available within Finder. So if we're navigating through our directory tree and we want to create a directory, we can use the makedir command to do so. Let's say I want to create a new folder in my projects directory. First I'll navigate to my projects directory, and then I'll use the makedir command in order to create a directory. I can use the ls command to list all of the directories in this project, in this folder, and I'll see that my project has been created. I can now cd into that directory and start accessing files there. cp allows us to copy files from directory to directory. Now let's say that I want to copy my index.html file to another folder. Using ls allows me to see that index.html is in the current folder that I'm in, and I'll use the cp command to move it to another directory. So I'll start with the file that I want to copy, index.html, and now where I want to transition it to. So let's go back a directory. I'll go back 2 directories because that'll be my projects folder, and I'll copy it as index-copied.html. Now the only way we'll know if this was successful is if we navigate back to that directory and run an ls command. And here we can see I've got index-copied.html. rm allows us to remove files or delete them using command line. This command allows us to remove directories and files from anywhere. So here, running an ls, I can see that I have an index-copied.html. I don't want that anymore. So use rm index-copied.html, and this will allow me to remove that file from the folder. Removing folders is a little bit more complicated. We have to add some flags to our commands. So let's say that I currently have a test project folder in this directory, and I want to remove everything inside of it, including the project itself. So I'll use rm, and then I'll set the flags R for recursive and F for folders. Then I'll pass it my test project directory, running that command, and then typing ls. We'll see that that whole project has been removed. Any files, folders, or anything inside that folder have also been deleted. mv will allow us to move files. We can also use this as a shortcut to renaming files by moving them into the same directory. Let's first look at renaming a file. In my boilerplate folder, I have an index.html file, and I want to change its name. So I'll use the mv command and start with the file I want to work with, index.html, and then I'll give it a new name. Let's say new-index.html. I'll run the command and type ls, and we'll see that I no longer have an index.html, but I now have a new index.html. The move command works a lot like the cp command, allowing us to, instead of copying a folder or file, move the entire folder or file. So let's move our index.html file back a couple directories to our projects folder, and we'll call it index.html. Now here, when I run a file listing, I can see index.html no longer exists in this folder, and if I traverse backwards to my projects directory, I can see index.html is here. I can also use the tilde to be a little more absolute about where my paths are being referenced. So here in my boilerplate folder, I don't want to have to know how deep this folder goes, and ... / is really handy, but in this case I want to be more absolute. So let's say I want to move my index.html file again. And this time I'll use the tilde to go to my home directory, my instructor directory, /projects, and then run the command. Now here we can see I have no index.html, and if I go backwards to my projects directory and run an ls, I can see index.html is here alongside my student sample code folder. Touch allows us to update the timestamp of a file or create it if it doesn't exist. Essentially an easy way to make blank files. Let's look at creating a new file with the touch command. I'm currently inside my projects directory and I want to create a new index.html file. So I can see there's no index.html file here, and if I use the touch command and type index.html, I can see that index.html has been created. Open allows us to open a file from the command line using the OS's default application. This command is really useful for opening directories in Finder. Let's say that I want to open the current directory that I'm in Finder. First I'll use open, and then the dot character represents the current directory that we're in. So I'll open projects in Finder. And here we can see it's opened my projects folder in Finder. The ls command allows us to list all files in the current directory. This will also include a listing of folders. Using ls, or list files and directories, allows us to see all files inside of a folder. For instance, let's say I don't know what projects I have in my projects folder. When I navigate to the projects directory, I can type ls and hit enter to see a list of all the files here. Now I only have one project here, so I'll cd into that project and type ls again. It looks like I only have one folder there, so I'll cd into boilerplate. And here I can see that I have a couple HTML files, a CSS file, a JS file, and another JS file. Terminal keeps track of commands that we've executed through its own history set. So using the up and down arrow keys on our keyboard allow us to navigate to previous commands that we've executed. Terminal also keeps track of our current command history. So let's say that I cd into the project's student sample code, and I go there, and then I go into the boilerplate folder, and let's say that I want to rerun some of these commands. So I'll cd back out to my projects directory. So if I type pwd, we can see that we're now in users instructor projects. If I hit the up arrow on my keyboard, I can scroll through a list of commands that I recently typed in. Both up and down will navigate. This is really useful for reusing commands. The subl command is set up by hand, so we'll need to install it. But once we've got it installed, it works a lot like the open command, except that instead of opening by the native application, we'll force the files to open up in the Sublime Text application. Another useful tool is the OSX command line subl command. This allows us to open files or folders in Sublime Text from command line. Just doing a search for Sublime Text 3, subl command will allow us to find this directory inside of the documentation for Sublime Text and give us a command that we can run inside of terminal to connect our terminal to Sublime Text. Once this command has been enabled and installed, I can use subl and then any file or folder I want to access. Let's say I want to access the entire current folder by using dot. This will open my projects folder, including any folders within there, and my boilerplate folder is accessible within.